Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sirhan on X as I am coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America on this 22nd of September 2025. Here's hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful weekend. Storms over here in Cincinnati, dark clouds, and just a cloudy night over here. Of course, a cloudy day in Cincinnati for various reasons. I'll touch on that in a minute. Hope all 32 teams just enjoyed their day yesterday in the NFL because I always love all of the fan bases going on my timeline, seeing everybody everywhere, good, bad, pretty, ugly. Of course, there's overreactions and a wild day when it comes to special teams just all over the place. I'll touch on that on a special segment here as a part of my show today because some stuff you see once in a lifetime. We saw a lot of this across the NFL landscape yesterday. And also, lots of history took place 40 years ago in the heavyweight division. I will relive that night in Las Vegas at the end of the show. I'm going to go ahead and get right down to it. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day and weekend. Let's start with the recap of yesterday for you newbies out here that are tuning in for the first time. I do day after recaps like everybody else does. I just paraphrase everything. I go by things quick. And I touch on some other stuff like overreactions and just my 2 cents on what took place yesterday. Start with what took place, of course, Thursday night. It was Buffalo over Miami. A little closer than expected, but we know the story here. The Thursday night was exactly why James Cook got the well-deserved contract extension. He showed it. He earned it. Basically, carrying the offense, 132 yards against the Jets, 108 yards here. Josh Allen, basically, it was still Josh Allen. You thought stopping Josh Allen was tough. Now we have James Cook doing what he's doing. Good luck trying to slow down that offense. Miami couldn't do anything with it. Tua did as well as he could for the first three quarters till the end when he became Tua, turned the ball over. And that's how Miami wound up losing that game. Miami's still going to be in the free fall. Buffalo, cream of the crop in the AFC for now, but got the job done Thursday night. So that's the Thursday night tilt. Now we're going to head to the early slate of the Sunday games. It was Jacksonville over Houston. Now Houston has a bit of a problem. CJ Stroud not looking good so far. But the investment the Houston Texans made in that offensive line this offseason, when you added guys like Cam Robinson, among others, and we're having a conversation once again, second straight year of of the Houston Texans unable to protect CJ Stroud, and it happened again. And their AFC woes continue to show, and especially on the offensive side, as Jacksonville's defense just gave it to them. I mean, Jordan Lewis, Antonio Johnson, two of the guys who picked off Stroud's passes. You talk about the Texans offense only averaging 13 points a game. That's not going to get you anywhere, especially in the AFC, which is fully loaded, and especially the AFC South, with even the cream of the crop of that division for the last two seasons. And looks like that reign might come to an end if things don't change real soon. And the ship is slowly sinking in Houston, but Jacksonville, 2-1, could have been 3-0 had Trevor Lawrence not had so many brain farts in Cincinnati. But that's what happened. That's what you have going on over there. Tyson Campbell played well, did a good job knocking up Nico Collins for the Jaguars. Jacksonville's 2-1. Houston's 0-3. Not time to write off Houston yet. We'll see what happens. But that offensive line needs to step up and learn how to protect C.J. Stroud, because you saw what happened in Cincinnati last week when that offensive line didn't protect their investment. Same thing's going to happen here with Houston and C.J. Stroud if that doesn't change soon. And a bit of a, I would say it was a shocker, but maybe in hindsight, maybe we shouldn't be. Carolina's defense just curb stomped the Falcons 30-0. After Atlanta had that great win in Minnesota, they lay an egg in Carolina. The Carolina defense just did anything and everything they wanted to do to Michael Penix. They brought in Kirk Cousins, and still nothing changed after that point. There are people wondering if they should stick to Kirk Cousins. No, you made the investment to draft Michael Penix Jr. 8th overall. This is the time you invest in him. I mean, you're going to have your ups and downs in Atlanta with him, but you don't just go back to Kirk Cousins all of a sudden unless you're guaranteed you're going to turn around and win the Super Bowl, which that's not happening in Atlanta. But the Falcons just even though they gained more than 100 yards on offense versus the Panthers, still was turning the ball over. Had 2 missed field goals by John Parker Romo, the guy who replaced Young Hoku, who the Falcons released. That turned out to be a backfire. But the defense of Carolina just did anything and everything they wanted to do. Pitched a shutout. Good home win for Carolina. No Jaden Daniels. No problem for Washington. Just beat down the Raiders. Somebody needs to teach the Raiders offensive line how to run block, because you have Alshon Jenti, who's barely doing anything right now. And you didn't draft Alshon Jenti to average barely 3 yards a carry. Because if you're going to do that, you might as well just call someone from the Walmart shop to take his place, because Alshon Jenti deserves better than this. You're the Raiders. Your offensive line ability to run block is absolutely abysmal right now, and your offense just got punked by the Commanders, and the Commanders didn't even have Jaden Daniels. Marcus Mariota did the job. Terry McLaurin, after a slow start, he got going a little bit. Long touch, the punt return for touchdown by Jalen Lane. That's a good one. But Washington got on track after looking terrible in Green Bay 10 days ago. Maybe a couple days extra got them going. Smart move by them to sit Daniels if he wasn't 100%. Mariota did the job to fill in. Got the win at home against the Raiders. On to bigger and better things for the Washington Commanders. And at 3-0, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers look like they're going to run away with the South. First team in NFL history to, if I'm correct, the first 3 games of the season won by starting with 3 straight wins on 3 game winning drives. Clutch gene of Baker Mayfield and his ascension after his being let go by Cleveland inexcusably and inexplicably continues. The Jets went toe-to-toe with them for 3 quarters and looked pretty good for the most part till the fourth quarter came around. And the fourth quarter, basically, the Jets just fell apart. You're talking about 2 blocked field goals in this game. And I'll talk about blocked field goals in a minute because this was all over the place. But the way Baker Mayfield drove them to the game-winning field goal at the end, and Emeka Egbuka has been the perfect fit for Tampa Bay after they got drafted in the first round, alongside Mike Evans. And just wait till when Chris Godwin comes back. Now you have a 3-headed monster at wide receiver, another target for Baker Mayfield. This Tampa offense is going to be problems moving forward. And that's at Baker Mayfield. They haven't looked all that great in the 3 wins, but they're 3-0 with 3 game-winning drives. And in a super early talk for MVP conversation, Baker Mayfield is now in it. And those guys in Cleveland are just getting what they deserve, watching Baker Mayfield just do what he's doing over there in Tampa. And that's a resurrection, an ascension to a top 15 quarterback, as I said the other day, continues. And the wild one, Philadelphia coming from behind over the Rams. How do you let this happen if you're LA? I mean, you're up 26-7. You had this Philly offense on lockdown, and you couldn't finish the job. What happened? Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua did everything they wanted to. The defense slowed down Saquon Barkley. I said that was going to be their focus. Held him to 50 yards. But what happened? You was up 26-7. You had everything under control. So you have 2 blocked field goals. You had a failed 4th down. I get it. But still, that defense let them down. And this was a defense that was just on fire the first 2 weeks in the first 3 quarters of this game and had this game under control. How do you let this happen? Jalen Hurts got going eventually. A.J. Brown, best game of the year. But if you're the Rams, this one's going to sting a little bit. When you have a game under control like this, you better learn how to put it away. It goes back to what I said, if you guys watched my show last week, about winning versus not losing. Doesn't matter what the score is. If you're playing the scoreboard to not lose a game, you're banging for an L. And that's what happened with the Rams in the fourth quarter of this game yesterday. They had the game won. Instead of just going for the finish, they decided to get complacent. They decided to stick to not losing versus winning. And as a result, they lost. That's why you play every minute of every game, of every possession, and have this game finished and under control. And make sure the only time you can stop playing is when the clock hits 0 in the fourth quarter the Rams are going to regret this one, especially if it comes down to home field advantage in the postseason when it comes to playoff seeding, because that's what happened last year, and it's going to happen this year. We'll find out what happens at the end of the season. Philly got away with one with here getting the win, but the Rams are going to be kicking themselves, and at least they should be after how they let that one slip. Those kind of games, they stick with you more than you think. I mean, we're out here. The players are over there. It depends on the mental mindset of the players. We'll find out what happens with the Rams moving forward. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll eventually be fine. They're still going to win that division. But when you talk about the eventual playoff seeding in the NFC, this is one that's going to hurt. And, of course, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers getting one over New England yesterday. The defense stepped up, basically shutting down the Patriots' offense. Nothing more needs to be said. T.J. Watt shows why he's one of the premier defensive players in the NFL, especially as an edge rusher. Versatile the defensive front for Pittsburgh. 2 sacks. Basically, Steelers' offense, although not that great, didn't need to be. Defense did the job. Good one for Pittsburgh. Good one for Pittsburgh. Maybe a bit of a stunner so far is how Indiana has looked, and they continued. That defense beat up Cam Ward, and Daniel Jones' resurrection continues, completing 72% of his passes. I said if he got the starting job over Anthony Richardson, which he did, he's going to take off, and so far he has. 3-0. The guy's played pretty much close to perfect football as you can in the NFL, and that's what he has done. Tennessee is just a hot mess. Brian Callahan's time over there might be coming to an end. Nobody knows yet. They're in a rebuild phase. I get it, but they had been listless so far this season. But for Indiana, you're 3-0. Keep the momentum going. Cam Bynum doing the job with that secondary. Louis Arumo, the hire from Cincinnati, basically dialing up the defense over there. And now they added Mike Hilton to fill a stopgap for a short-term loss in the cornerback position. They're going to be still pretty good for the most part. They're 3-0. Daniel Jones is cooking right now. You got to give him his due. Taking advantage of the opportunity when he was announced a starter. He's still continuing the momentum, and he's still just doing the job. They're 3-0. Kudos to that. Indy stomped Tennessee. Maybe it's time for Tennessee to move on from Brian Callahan because nothing's getting done over there. And talk about teams that are going to scratch their heads after having games under control. Another one was the Denver Broncos. Had the Chargers offense limited for the longest time, but offensively, they couldn't put it away. What happens? Justin Herbert lays into the game-winning field goal as time expired. And that's now they're 3-0. All 3 wins in the division. Leg up for now on the AFC West. Keyword being for now because we know a lot of things change from here to the end. But good. Unfortunate for the Chargers, Najee Harris out with a torn ACL. I'll touch on all of these ACL injuries in a second. Rather unfortunate. But for Denver, you looked better, but you got to close. You got to close. That happened. That's what happened with you. Just like what happened with the Rams, same thing happened with the Broncos. You had that game won, you couldn't close it out. The difference between winning versus not losing. Winners, close it out. But Denver's going to eventually be fine. Defense showed some signs a little bit, but in the clutch, there's a case Bo Nix versus Justin Herbert. It was Herbert once again. And this one here is the Bears over the Cowboys. Nothing more needs to be said. Bears showed up. Cowboys didn't. Cowboys defense is going to be what it is all season long. They made Caleb Williams look like a prime Dan Marino. Don't think that was ever possible. That's how bad the Cowboys defense is. If you make Caleb Williams look like Dan Marino, your defense is a problem. That's what happened in that game. I mean, that says a lot if you make Caleb Williams look like a prime Dan Marino. Good one in the out west. The defensive struggle between the Cardinals and the 49ers. Story with this one, offensive miscues by the Cardinals, especially a key drop by Marvin Harrison Jr., who was wide open and a pass right to his hands and dropped it, a chance to clinch it. But that didn't happen. As a result, they had a punt. 49ers drove down the field to get the game-winning field goal. But the Cardinals offense still with issues. Defensively, they look much, much better than they did in previous years. But offensively, Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to start making plays. I mean, they didn't draft you 4th overall just so you can be a wide receiver body. He has to start making plays. He had a nice pass to him from Kyler Murray, right to his hands, and he dropped it. That needs to improve. But solid home win for the 49ers in the division. Division wins is always a must, especially in a 17-game schedule. Good job by the 49ers. Seahawks over the Saints. Simply put, all Seahawks, no Saints. I mean, that's all that was. And the nightcap was the Chiefs over the Giants. Chiefs got going in the second half after a subpar first half. Giants, it's going to be a long season. Might as well just throw up Jackson Dart. I don't know why they're hesitant not to. Time to start the Jackson Dart era over there in New York, because Russell Wilson is not it. So that's my NFL recap. And the last one I'm going to touch on is what took place in Minnesota yesterday between the Bengals and the Vikings, where there was a first-class beatdown and a punking that took place. I was listening to a bunch of you guys in Cincinnati today, and a whole lot of you guys. And I was just watching you guys on social media. I was watching you guys, listening to you guys on all the radio stations, and all your podcasts, and whatever. Lots of finger pointing going on. Lots of stuff that I try to tell you for the last 3 years that you refuse to listen. And here I am, once again, having to restand the position. Because apparently someone took one of my clips and put me on a radio show. And apparently Bengals fans, per usual, have their underwears all up in a bunch. Anybody knows me, I never once said, pay your top 3 guys top dollar. And there's a reason for it. You saw it week 2, and you saw it again yesterday. That's a byproduct of what happens when you want this sort of thing. And I said this all along when it comes to what's going on here in Cincinnati. This was going to come because you weren't going to win this 5-game stretch coming up. I mean, after this, you're going to have a pissed-off Denver team who let one slip against the Chargers. You're going to have Detroit coming home, who's an offensive juggernaut, who's just probably going to hang 70 on that defense. You're going to have to go to Green Bay, who's still going to be pissed off after letting one slip in Cleveland. And, of course, Pittsburgh, who always makes Cincinnati their home away from home. Because every time they come to Cincinnati, we know what happens. And it's going to probably happen again. When you make the demands and push the narrative forcefully and have the mindset of tunnel vision, and you have the mindset of someone trying to drive the wrong way on a one-way street and thinking you're not going to get pushback, this is what you expect to happen. And that's what the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media have done all off-season for the last 4 years. You wanted Joe Burrow pay the top dollar. You wanted Jamar Chase pay the top dollar. You wanted T. Higgins pay the top dollar. You wanted Trey Hendrickson pay the top dollar. And you wanted Orlando Brown Jr. so you can send Jesse Bates out the door. We told you that was not the way to go. Yours truly being one of them. All of you guys in Cincinnati, when it comes to the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media, refused to listen and thought this was the way to go. What happened when all this happened? 2 times in the last 3 seasons, Burrow winds up having season-ending surgery. Actually, he might be back at the end of the season, but they'll be out of the playoffs. I think if the Bengals were smart, they just tell him to sit it out for the season. They said he was on a scooter today, but, it is what it is. When you don't see the attention to detail on a roster or on a team, whatever part of your role on the team is, and you don't see it, you can expect this to be the result. And what happened yesterday in Minnesota was a byproduct of what I try to tell this fan base for the last 4 years, because this was coming. It was slow, but sure, but it came. I mean, the wheels are falling off. I mean, I would say falling off, but they're close to falling off. I mean, I hate to say it, but they are. When you ignore the details and you don't see the little stuff in the middle, especially when it comes to your needs, you can expect this to happen moving forward. And that's what I expect, because the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media have the short-sighted tunnel vision and think they can get away with driving on the wrong way on a one-way street on an interstate highway and not expect a head-on collision. When you wind up with that kind of a head-on collision, you're going to get a mess. And that's what the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media got yesterday as a result of everything they wanted for the past 4 years. And as a result, karma came knocking on your door. I said all along, the players deserve a lot better. The players deserve tons better. They really do. Because they work hard. I'll give them that. Not the Cincinnati Bengals fans or the Cincinnati media, because of how you carry yourselves over the last 4 years. And what happened yesterday was a byproduct of how you guys carried yourselves for the demand you wanted. Because I said you guys were the reason what happened in the preseason at Washington, what happened. And it basically caught up to you yesterday in Minnesota. And I said they were going to win. I think I expect to be a punking because that's exactly what happened. But that's a byproduct of the demands Bengals fans and Cincinnati media asked for the last 4 years. They got it, and they had to hand it to them yesterday. It's unfortunate that the players had to suffer through this because I'd rather have the Bengals fans and Cincinnati media go through it. But it is what it is. I'll be touching more on this probably later on this week because, I get a little annoyed at, and it is annoying when you try to tell someone something on and nobody wants to listen. That's the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media by far. Why? Because they think their way is the only way. They have the mindset of going down the wrong way on a one-way street or down the wrong way on an interstate highway, people coming at you at 80 miles per hour and thinking they're going to get away with it. What happened yesterday in Minnesota is proof that theory fails. That's why Bengals fans are failures. That's why Cincinnati media is filled with failures. That's why they got what they deserved yesterday. Karma came knocking on your guys' door. And as a result, I don't feel sorry for you guys. I feel sorry for the players. I feel sorry for the players because they deserve better. But not the Bengals fans or the Cincinnati media, because I told you for the last 4 years this was going to happen because nobody demanded this team to put together an offensive line to protect Joe Burrow. This group did not demand an improvement on their defense. They were sick-headed upset with wanting Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson paid top dollar. They were sick-headed upset with wanting Orlando Brown Jr. on their roster. And what happened as a result? It caught up to you yesterday in Minnesota. There's no other way around it. The results speak for themselves. I'll let the results dictate that. Bengals fans and Cincinnati media, you got your karma. I'm sitting back and just smiling as I say, I told you so. End of that. It's going to try and drag me into more stuff, but don't worry, I'm ready for them. Of course, with Monday, it's always Overreaction Monday. I'll just touch on a few of this real quick. People are calling for in Atlanta thinking that it should keep on with Kirk Cousins over Michael Penix Jr. No, because Atlanta made the investment in Michael Penix Jr. You stick to him at this point because Kirk Cousins more likely is going to be done after the season. I think there's a way out of the ridiculous contract, that Cousins signed in Atlanta. I expect that to take care of itself. People are already annoying Justin Herbert, the MVP. I don't partake in week 3 MVPs, but he's certainly in the conversation. He's off to a good start. Got to give him that. I mean, the Packers offense is going to basically will prevent him from winning a Super Bowl. Nah. Cleveland's defense is as good as anybody's. Myles Garrett is as good as it gets on the defensive front. And when he's wreaking havoc, that the rest of the defense follows suit. That's what happened yesterday against Green Bay. Yes, Jordan Love didn't play all that great. I get it, but that's because the Cleveland defense did its job. That's some of the overreactions. I could touch on more. Actually, speaking of the game in Minnesota, if I'm you guys in Minnesota, you keep Carson Wentz as a starter, simply because Carson Wentz has played almost as close to a perfect game as you possibly could, albeit against a Bengals team that fell apart. But keep the momentum with him. You might be doing things down the line because that defense under Brian Flores is serious business. I mean, it was serious business last year. It's carried over into this year. And it's going to be serious business moving forward. The personnel of that roster, especially now they got Harrison Smith back, is going to be serious business moving forward. That's going to win them a lot of games. And should the Bengals move on from Zach Taylor, everyone's calling for him. But once again, the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media want to absolve themselves from accountability and the conversation. That's where the blame should be on. Actually, I got a lot to say about some of their actions. I'll touch on that midweek. And a wild day for special teams all day yesterday. I never seen anything like it. I counted at least 6 blocked field goals, 4 different punt returns for touchdowns. I think another instance where, if I can pull this up here, I pulled the stats up on this. This is wild. A fumble return for touchdown, which was the Bengals in Minnesota. Several pick sixes, and many others. The special teams yesterday. Well, maybe we start putting more emphasis on special teams, and I don't think people do that enough. The thing is crazy. You don't see 6 blocked field goals in a season. I counted 6 yesterday across the NFL landscape at least. How does that happen? Attention to detail problem is probably one. How do you miss an assignment like that? But that's crazy. At least 6 blocked field goals. 2 of those blocked field goals were returned for touchdowns. One of them to the closer of the Rams and the Eagles. A couple punt returns, even a blocked punt in the Seahawks Saint game. Now people need to start putting more emphasis on special teams, I guess, because this stuff you maybe see maybe a handful of times at a season tops. All of this was yesterday across the entire NFL landscape. That's crazy. Even one kickoff return where somebody nearly broke it. I can't remember which game that was. But yeah, it might be time to put a little emphasis on special teams a little bit. Talking about at least 6 blocked field goals across the entire NFL. At least 4 pick sixes. I think there was 2 in one game, I believe. Don't hold me to it. Talk about punt returns, blocked field goals, blocked field goal returns for touchdowns, a punt return for a touchdown. All of that in the entire landscape yesterday. You don't get anything close to that number in an entire NFL season across the entire NFL. That's crazy. Guess now we have to start doing scouting for special teams players and special teams blockers or whatever, because that's what it's going to come down to. I've never seen anything like it. And that's just field goal blocks. Field goal blocks that change momentums of games. There was one where it looked like the Jets had a control. Tampa Bay blocks it, and they go back for the game-winning field goal. A couple times. Actually, there was one, of course, where the Rams had the Eagles blocked, but it was called for a questionable taunting. But the Eagles had another one themselves that's stymied the early momentum. And, of course, the one at the end that saved the Eagles from having their first loss of the season. It's crazy. I never seen anything like it. Have all that across an entire NFL season. If you have it across an entire season is one thing. Have it all on 1 week, at least in like 4 or 5 of these games, as many as they had. It's crazy. Maybe time to have a special team scouting department across the NFL, I guess, because that's something unforeseen. Don't think we'll get anything like that again, because that's just wild. And of course, there was, a safety in there I should add with the Cardinals and 49ers. That made everything crazy. Now I'll touch on one thing before I head on to the Holmes Spinks fight. Shout out to the Cincinnati Reds. You did it. You find a way to overtake. I said overtake the Mets yet. Find yourselves in the playoff hunt. You got Hunter Green back. He pitched the gym Friday night against Chicago, and you guys are rolling right now. Keep the momentum going. It's a thing of beauty right now. Him, Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, doing the job with the pitching. Spencer Steer, TJ Friedl, of course, Ellie, doing the best he can to generate runs. We know generating runs at times has been like a needle in a haystack when it comes to the Reds offense. But keep the momentum going. You're doing something good. For you to bring the brooms to sweep Chicago and send it back to Chicago with a broom shoved up their butt, that's a great thing. Just keep it going. You have the Pirates coming in. They have nothing to play for. Keep the momentum going. You have an opportunity here. Make the most of it. It's nice. Because I always said, when Cincinnati sports is really kicking was when the Reds really start to do something. Because the electric with the Reds and the Reds fan base is just as electric as FC Cincinnati and that soccer fan base. Keep the momentum going, Cincinnati. Keep the momentum going, Cincinnati Reds. Looking good. I'm wearing my tradition for you guys today. So keep the momentum going. Beautiful. I just hope fingers crossed because we've seen the story before. Just when you think they're ready to uplift you guys, they find a way to bring you down. but I hope they keep the momentum going. Terry Francona found a way to get something going out of this team, and they're keeping rolling with it. Good job. And now to all my fight followers, because I always said my podcast is everything for everybody. So here we go. We're going to take you back to 1985, 40 years ago today. Built as history, September to remember, and it certainly was. It was a heavyweight championship, the first of two meetings between Larry Holmes and Michael Spinks. 49-0 versus the first light heavyweight champion ever to win the heavyweight title. That was what was at stake on this particular night. With nothing really left to prove in the light heavyweight division, Michael Spinks saw an opportunity to make the move to heavyweight. And he caught it at the right time because after the Jerry Cooney fight, people started to see that Larry Holmes started to slowly hit the downturn. And understandably so, when you have the 7.5-year reign like Holmes did, he's going to, at times, going to show his age, and he did. Before this, he got the suspect decision win over Carl Williams, a fight that everyone thought Williams should have been rewarded the decision, that Holmes got it based on his legendary stature. But of course, Larry Holmes was looking to tie Rocky Marciano's mark of 49-0 against Michael Spinks, whose dominant reign at light heavyweight was looking to become the first light heavyweight champ to win the heavyweight championship. And this was the legit heavyweight championship, not the fake titles that was being passed around by Don King politics. The story of this one, Holmes got up to the good start using his jab, but Michael Spinks was a case of a fighter who knows how to make adjustments on the fly, and that's what he did. Did not allow Larry Holmes to dictate the pace with that jab. Got in, got the combinations, got out, got in, got out. As the fight was wearing on, he was starting to frustrate Larry Holmes, and Larry Holmes was starting to become very timid. And Spinks knew it and took advantage of it. Got in, put the combinations together, got out. Didn't let the naturally bigger Holmes dictate the pace with the size, knowing that Spinks had the speed advantage, and that's what happened. Actually, one little interesting tidbit on how he became a heavyweight going into this fight. He basically, being Michael Spinks, filled up with basically carbohydrates and proteins, barely had any fat. He basically put on 25 pounds, but was basically, his fat wasn't necessarily bigger as he got heavier. And that played as a major factor to how he was able to dictate and beat Larry Holmes on this night 40 years ago. Because it was in and out, not allowing Larry Holmes to get off. And Michael Spinks knew it. And as the decision was announced, it was a unanimous decision win for Michael Spinks to become the first light heavyweight champion to win the lineal heavyweight championship. And basically the scorecards were a little bit closer than I thought. Basically, Spinks pulled away late. All three had it 145, 142 for Spinks. And basically, as the fight was wearing on, Michael Spinks was starting to frustrate Larry Holmes, and Larry Holmes couldn't get off for whatever reason. Of course, later it was revealed Larry Holmes said he had something within his neck and his vertebrae, which he claims that's a part of it. But we know fighters make excuses after losses. He's no different. But the story of this one was a case of a great little man going up to a bigger weight class and beating the great big man. And that's what Michael Spinks did by becoming the first light heavyweight champion to win the world heavyweight title when he ended the 7.5-year reign of Larry Holmes as the heavyweight champion of the world. And of course, spun off on the Larry Holmes aspect, not being able to get to 49-0, dropped his record to 48-1, spun off the most controversial press conference he has ever given, and he's given a lot of those, as we all know, when he basically said about not being able to tie Rocky Marciano's mark of 49-0, that Rocky Marciano couldn't carry his jockstrap. And everyone in the fight game knows the press conference about that one. And Larry Holmes later retracted it and apologized for it, which, kudos to him. Larry Holmes was always a guy, when he came after Muhammad Ali and the 70s run, always felt like he had a chip on his shoulder and always had something to prove. And knowing he wasn't going to be able to sell the way Ali used to sell fights, felt like he had to be a little controversial as a selling point. And this was a case of it after the fight. Because he'll say things and makes you wonder why he's saying it. And what he said after the Spinks fight was probably one of them. And probably one of those ones where he himself has probably kicked himself for the longest time saying it. Because he dared to be great and he wanted to be great. And he certainly got to that point. I mean, during that run, he ducked no one, fought anyone that came into his path, beat them all until this night, 40 years ago, and basically just had a terrific run. And you can say a lot of things about Larry Holmes, with how some of the things that he says and some of the ways he carried himself at times, which was a bit of a head scratcher. I get it in the boxing fraternity. But we consider the era he came in, and after what it was with the back end of the 70s, when he started after Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Norton, and all them hit their downturn, or in the case of Foreman, took that 10-year sabbatical. He felt like he was in that conversation, and he felt like he was slighted by the boxing intelligentsia, who never got him his due, and will always consider him after Ali. And that's the thing that always drove Larry Holmes crazy. Because when people talk about the all-time greats, he feels like for that time, his name wasn't mentioned, and he wanted to know why. He felt like no one wanted to give him the credit. Remember how the buildup was for his fight with Jerry Cooney 3.5 years before that, how that craziness took about. And that's how Larry Holmes was the way he was. And basically, it got off the rails a little bit after he lost to Michael Spinks, dropping to 48-1 instead of tying Rocky Marciano's 49-0. To make the statement he made when it comes to not Rocky Marciano couldn't carry my jockstrap, that was something maybe in hindsight he should have never said. And deep down, he did apologize for it. And I'm sure deep down he knew it. But for Michael Spinks, he made history. The first light heavyweight champ to win the heavyweight title. Did it in the way maybe some others should have learned from. Don't mess with the big man. And maybe the biggest misfortune for Michael Spinks is all of the morons out here in the boxing community think of him as the one that got whacked out by Mike Tyson in 91 seconds. His legacy was when he ruled the roost for the light heavyweight division, and when he hit the apex on this night 40 years ago, when he beat Larry Holmes as a 6-1 underdog to win the heavyweight championship. They always say the theory is a great big man beats the great little man. This was a case of the great little man using his brains to outclass the great big man, and that's what Michael Spinks did 40 years ago. Of course, this prompted a rematch a little more than a year later in a fight where Holmes, basically the first half of the fight was the same way as a rematch, but this time Larry Holmes took over the second half of the fight, and Michael Spinks was given a split decision nod controversially. That drove to another case of Larry Holmes basically telling everybody to kiss me where the sun don't shine, and the boxing fraternity knows about that interview. Which, Larry Holmes has a case because the boxing world thought he was slighted in that rematch. They say it was built as history. Michael Spinks made history, and Larry Holmes' run as a heavyweight champion was history because that was it, and he would never become a world champ again. He fought 3 more times for the world title against Tyson, Holyfield, and McCall. Couldn't get over the hump. Although he had a credible performance against Holyfield in 92. But maybe the biggest misfortune for both these fighters, and equally, was the eras they came in and how they're remembered. Because these two were fabulous, fabulous, fabulous fighters from the back end of the 70s throughout the 80s. They both were. From the Holmes point of view, he came after Ali. Biggest misfortune, nothing he can do about that because that's how it was. For Michael Spinks, everyone thinks of him as a guy who checked out against Mike Tyson, which shows the moronism of the boxing fans and the boxing community, because his greatness was at the light heavyweight division, where he's arguably a top 10 all-time great light heavyweight. When you think about the guys in that division, Ezra Charles, Billy Conn, Bob Foster, Archie Moore, Tommy Loughran, Michael Spinks is in that conversation. That's how great Michael Spinks was as a light heavyweight. But people still think of him as the guy that knocked out Mike Tyson, because the boxing fraternity had a sick, obsessive love with Mike Tyson, almost borderline psychotic, to where they want to disrespect Michael Spinks. That's probably the biggest misfortune for both of these fighters, that no one saw their greatness and they're better remembered for something else. And it is sort of a shame, because these two were fabulous, fabulous fighters who had a epic night 40 years ago on HBO's World Championship Boxing outside of the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas. And it was billed as history, as September to remember. It was. Both guys put on a good show in front of a crowd of 11,200. But it was Michael Spinks who made history by making Larry Holmes' championship reign history, by being the first fighter to win the first world light heavyweight champ to win the heavyweight title, by unanimously decisioning Larry Holmes in a close, competitive, high-skilled fight between two boxing purists of the sweet science. And that's what both Larry Holmes and Michael Spinks were. As I said, the biggest misfortune was how they were remembered. It is a crying shame that nobody wants to remember these guys for who they really were. I mean, if that's what you're going to remember these two fighters for, it's an indictment on you, because you guys don't follow the game the correct way or the right way. These two guys were genuine greats. I mean, Larry Holmes is a top 10 all-time great heavyweight. Michael Spinks is a top 10 all-time great light heavyweight. That's a no-brainer. I mean, if they're not in your top 10 of those divisions, you better get checked for CTE, because you're flat dome. And people want to remember them for, when they came and what happened to them on their downturn. Says a lot about you guys as individuals at the end of the day. And that's why I stopped dealing with some people like that. You can't control the era they came on. I mean, that's something neither guy could control. I mean, granted, Michael Spinks was on his downturn after he beat Holmes in 2 fights. I get it. And of course, everybody knows how explosive he was knocked out by Mike Tyson. But if that's your memory of Michael Spinks, you're not a true, genuine fight fan. You're just someone born with the streets with a criminal mind, plain and simple. Same with Larry Holmes. If you remember him as after Ali, you were born from the streets with a criminal mind, because he was a genuine all-time great. Nobody would go 7.5 years and make 20 successful title defenses and just become some bum of the month, because Larry Holmes certainly was not that. Everybody in the fight community needs to give these two guys their due. I remember them for what made them great. Plain and simple. And they were genuinely great, purest of the game. And when they were in that ring, they were tough outs for anybody. And it would be tough outs for anybody in any era, because they had the skill to get the job done when it mattered. Give these two their due a little bit. It's simple. I'm not asking for much. And on that note, I will wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back tomorrow night with a lot of heavyweight history, and we're going real deep to the record books tomorrow night. And it's going to be real deep. For those that missed this show tonight or any others, you can catch the replays on the Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio, and the Spotify apps. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. If you take care of yourself first, good things will come your way. Always focus on you first. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Take care of yourself first, and good things will follow. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless. Enjoy the evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.